My name is Dr. AJ Thurad. I'm a general internal medicine physician and the Vice Chair of Informatics and Analytics at Wake Forest School of Medicine in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Today I'm going to talk a bit about EKGs and how we embedded EKG data elements in the CTSI's i2b2 translational data warehouse. To start out, I'd like to just talk about what is an EKG. An EKG is a graph of voltage versus time of the electrical activity of the heart using electrodes placed on the skin. These EKGs can be used to diagnose various disease states, including heart attacks or heart arrhythmias, or really any disease that affects the electrical activity of the heart. It can be infiltrative diseases or even inflammatory diseases. These electrodes detect the small changes that are a consequence of cardiac muscle depolarization and repolarization during each cardiac cycle. And you see here one segment of each cardiac cycle and the corresponding electrical signals that we detect in an EKG. So our goal with this project and getting EKG data into the electronic translational data warehouse was to embed as many variables as possible. So here you can see the list of variables that we have available to our researchers and investigators for EKGs. And that includes the impression or the narrative, which is the actual interpretation by the attending physician cardiologist. We have P-wave axis, PR interval, QT, the corrected QT, which is often used in clinical care, QRS duration, as well as the complex, as well as R-wave and T-wave axis. You have the ability to potentially drag and drop any number of these data elements and create logical paradigms. So for example, here we have dragged QT interval over from the terminology into the search function and defined a value of less than 0.4. And so this query, when run, would yield the number of individuals that have a QT interval of less than 0.4 seconds. And you see 85 here. You can create combinations, use and or logic here as well. So what can you ultimately do with the EKG data? Ultimately, with these data elements, we can do a couple things. We have an example slide next, but we'll just discuss it here. You can identify patients for a research study, and that's cohort identification. How many individuals have a P-wave that is greater than 0.23 milliseconds? That would be one example. You could use it for clinical innovation or a quality improvement project. How many individuals with a P-wave greater than 0.23 milliseconds or a QT less than 0.4 are on a specific medication, and should we consider changing that? You can also use it in computerized clinical decision support. All of these data elements can be used as an interaction term, a confounder, or a mediator for outcomes of interest, and those outcomes may be major adverse cardiac event, could be cardiac arrest, could be death, mortality, whatever outcome of interest. If there is a consideration around the electrical axis of the heart being involved, again, these can be used. Additionally, we can link EKG data elements with other data elements in i2b2. That can be lab results like magnesium or potassium, some other electrolyte that may in fact impact the electrical axis of the heart. Echocardiographic results like left ventricular ejection fraction. Medications like those that affect the QT interval or create potentially arrhythmias. Any available patient-reported outcomes or even social determinants of health. So here we have two examples, one project and one example, and talk a little bit about future directions. So one example of a QI project may be to decrease prescriptions for individuals with prolonged QTC intervals and potentially dangerous medications to prevent arrhythmias and death. It's just one example, and you could use these data elements that are embedded in the translational data warehouse to achieve that goal. One of the clinical scholars in informatics projects is led by Dr. Nikhil Patel with his team. It is the design and implementation of a clinical decision support tool for management of device therapy and congestive heart failure. His project will leverage EKG data elements from the translational data warehouse, along with additional electronic health record data elements like history of CHF or medications to create a computerized clinical decision support embedded within care, ultimately directed at the cardiologists and potentially primary care physicians to more effectively identify individuals who may benefit from cardiac resynchronization therapy or implantable cardioverter defibrillator therapy. And with that, we'll close. Really appreciate the CTSI, their resources, along with the collaboration we had throughout the institution at Wake Forest to make these data elements available to all of our researchers, faculty, staff, and other interested parties. Thank you very much.